Introduce myself, I'm Daniel, founder of PMS Bazaar. Today, I will be your host to moderate this exclusive webinar. I would like to thank and appreciate all the participants for taking your time to participate this webinar. Today is an auspicious day for us as we celebrate our third anniversary. We thank you for making us number one choice for PMS and AF. So let me give a brief introduction about Mr. Jairam. Mr. Jairam is a chartered accountant by qualification and having more than 27 years of equity experience in the equity market. So he has successfully managed fund across different business cycles and has consistently delivered superior returns to his investors. Jairam has been a value investor and he has a stringent template when it comes to stock selection. So Jointree Value Fund is a consistent outperformer for the last 18 months since its inception. The fund has delivered an alpha around 8.5% over the benchmark indices, which is Nifty 500. And for the 1 year period, the alpha is more than 12.5%. And Mr. Jairam believes the volatility in the short term leads to rational investor behavior. And at the time, stock price has no relation to its actual worth. So without further delay, I am handing over to Mr. Jairam to start his presentation. Post his presentation, we will be having a Q&A session and we will be, if time permits, we will answer all your queries. Over to you, Mr. Jairam.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. And before I start, let me congratulate PMS Bazaar on their third anniversary and wish them all the very best for future. Thank you, Daniel, for this opportunity. As introduced by Mr. Daniel, I am Jairam from Jointree Value Fund. Let me start giving you a history of Jointree Value Fund. We formed the Jointree Value Fund in the month of November 2018, and it is 19 months since we commenced our operations. We are a discretionary portfolio fund with Nifty 500 as our benchmark index. We are very proud to share with you that we have bet the benchmark returns across time frame, be it 1 year or be it 19 months since the date of inception. We have delivered an alpha of 12.65% on a 1 year time frame and 8.7% alpha from inception till date. And just to give you a background of the last 19 months in which we operated, I think it will give you an insight as to the turbulent times behind us when we started our operations, and thanks to our tight investment philosophy, we were able to generate an alpha over the benchmark index. In the last 19 months since we commenced our operations, in October 2018 was the IL&FS fiasco, and after that, in the last 19 months in our operation, we had 3 big bank scams. The first one was Diwan Housing, a NBFC scam. Then we had a PMC bank scam, then a S Bank scam. And in the month of March, we ended up in a pandemic, COVID-19. So it is in this background of all these disasters, rather, we have been able to create this alpha, and it has been largely thanks to the tight investment philosophy which we had devised at the point of our operations. Now, coming to the investment philosophy, which has really helped us navigate these tough times and give positive results to our investors. Our investment philosophy is premised on 2 basic principles. One is low portfolio standard deviation, meaning the drawdown of the portfolio at any point of time has to be at the minimum. And 2, the portfolio seeks to generate a return of 15% over a period of 5-year time frame, meaning we aim at doubling the capital every 5 years. So these 2 put together is read like this: you double your capital in every 5 years with a minimum drawdown. So this is the template on which we construct the portfolio. Now, coming to the principle on which stock selection takes place, and the investment philosophy embedded in it. We are basically value seekers. We want to determine the value before getting into a stock. Rather, I'll put it this way. We at John Deere Value Fund are business analysts rather than a stock analyst. What we're trying to do at the outset is understand the business. For us, understanding the business is about 70 to 80% of the research what we undertake. Once we understand the business, there's a regular template of qualitative and quantitative assessments which happen. In qualitative assessment, yes, we do have a check on the management background. We have a clear understanding about the market prospects for the products, and we try to get a third-party reference about the management, etc., etc. And on quantitative assessment, it's as usual, you go through the cash flows, fund flows, etc., which are pretty common across all fundamental investment philosophy. The basic difference between I'll put it this way: the highlight in John Deere Value Fund is what we theorize and what we prophesize, we practice. What I mean to say is the core investment philosophy which we have embedded in our template is practiced. That is the reason why we have been able to outshine the benchmark and deliver superior returns to the investors. Now, let me dwell in detail about the value strategy what we follow. We have we know that price is what you pay for buying a stock, and price is given on the screen. What our job as a fund manager and as a John Deere Value Fund team, what we have to do is determine the value. So the entire job of a portfolio management company is to understand the business, determine the value, and ensure that it's a fair price to pay for buying an underlying business. So to put it very simply, this is exactly the work we have to undergo, and this is exactly what a portfolio manager is supposed to do. And in the BSE exchange, Bombay Stock Exchange rather, there are about 4,500 stocks listed, which get traded on a day-to-day basis. Out of which, in our template, we only have a maximum of about 80 stocks which qualify as investment grade. So we apply very tight principles, we apply very tight regulations for picking a stock. And I would like to illustrate our philosophy by giving you a slide on the actual stock selection in our portfolio and its performance over the 19-month period, as it will illustrate better rather than me elaborating theoretically a lot about our investment philosophy. So let me get into straight away the slide, the top 10 stocks in our portfolio, which constitutes about 60% of our corpus. Yeah, I think it is there on the screen. This is the top 10 holdings of John Deere Value Fund as on 5th June 2020. We have the top 10 stocks are listed here. First is Hindustan Lever Limited. It has a weightage of 10.26%. And the third column is the recommended price, meaning the price at which we initiated and started buying Hindustan Lever Limited. It is at the price of 1,768, and all these companies, what we have shown here as a research report, which is hosted in our PMS site. The date of recommendation is given next to it. It is 3rd December 2018, and the fourth column is current market price, which is 2088, and we are taking into account the dividend received till date, which is 24 rupees, and the return generated till date on Hindustan Lever, which is 19.46. So this table gives you exactly the investment philosophy which I want to talk to you about. So let me just read out the stock name and dwell on it for about 5-6 minutes. The first stock is Hindustan Lever, second stock is HDFC Bank. It has a weightage of 9.73%, and it has given us a return of 5.93% till date. HDFC Limited, it is a 9.43% in our corpus, and it has delivered minus 6.39% as on date. We have Tata Consultancy Services, which is the fourth one at 5.36%, and it has delivered 7.85%. Then we have Sanofi India, which is a 4.83% weightage in the corpus and has returned 42.33%. Then we have Sundaram Finance at 4.43%, delivering minus 17.97%. Then we have Pfizer at 4.17%, delivering a return of 54.36%. Then we have GMM Pfaudler at 4.36%, delivering a return of 198%. Then Infosys at 3.68, delivering a return of 5.14. And 10th is Mahanagar Gas Limited at 3.48% of our portfolio, returning 28.32% return till date. So if we just look at the table of 10 stocks what I have given, it covers across industries. You have a FMCG, you have a banking sector, you have a pharma, you have industrials, and you have software, and you have oil and gas. So the top 10 stocks represents 6 industries, and they have a weightage of 60% of our portfolio. And if you look at the composition of this 10 stocks, one thing which is underlying the entire 10 stocks, irrespective of the industry, is the quality of the balance sheet, the management, and the corporate governance. The common thread in all these 10 stocks are these 3 factors are exemplary. It comes out very well in terms of corporate governance, in terms of their business model, and in terms of their balance sheet and other financials. So the most important thing, as I was trying to tell you, is the corporate governance, which is the most important qualitative factor which we look into at the point of evaluating a stock for our portfolio. Now, if you look at these 10 companies, let me dwell on each of them for a minute. Hindustan Lever Limited, I will again come out with another slide on this company to say why Hindustan Lever Limited could be one of the biggest winners going forward also. As we all know, it is the biggest FMCG company and has a turnover of about 40,000 crores and has got a EBITDA margin of 24-25% and is a consistent performer across periods. And it is least affected by any of the extraneous factors that impact the economy. In other words, it is insulated against many of the happenings which affect the economy, as their products are a day-to-day product for everyone. Then comes the 3 financial stocks: HDFC Bank Limited, HDFC Limited, and Sundaram Finance. HDFC Bank Limited, needless to say, is the leader in the banking sector. HDFC Limited is a leader in housing finance, and three Sundaram Finance is one of the oldest FMCG company from South India, having the best return ratios, having the best NPA ratios for the industry. And coming to other stocks, GMM Pfaudler. GMM Pfaudler comes under the head industrials, and they manufacture glass-lined products for pharma and agrochemical industry. Then on the pharma sector, we have Sanofi and Pfizer, the 2 MNCs operating in this country, and they have a phenomenal balance sheet with excellent products and also over-the-counter products. Then comes Infosys and TCS in software, and market leaders in their own right. And then comes Mahanagar Gas, which is again a very pretty balance sheet and a good robust business model, insulated from many of the vagaries of the economy. So in a nutshell, all these companies have the USP and are very highly insulated from the happening in the economy. Not to say that they will not get totally, I mean, they'll be totally away from the impact of the downturn in the economy. What I mean to say here is they'll be least impacted and will be the first to recover whenever the economy takes a turn for good. So in short, what I'm trying to say in our stock selection in John Tree Value Fund is these factors of corporate governance and high quality balance sheet and the ability to grow and deliver returns are all embedded, and we are sure these portfolio selection of stocks will be able to deliver 15 to 20% return over a period of 5-year time. And if these are the numbers I can show to you on the background of the last 19 months of turbulence, I'm pretty sure once things settle and looks positive, these companies will be able to deliver a lot more superior returns going forward. So this is on the investment philosophy which I wanted to share with you. Then going forward, now the global economy has crossed an inflection point and is poised for bigger things. We have started unlocking from COVID-19, and COVID-19 is now history, and everybody has understood about it, the pandemic, its downside, etc. has been very well analyzed in so many forums. And as I said, we have crossed over COVID-19 and we look forward to future. Now, going ahead to future, yes, COVID-19 has affected immensely the economy globally, and the ways of business and the model of doing business, etc., are going to be a game changer going forward. There is no doubt that COVID-19 has been instrumental in changing of a lot of old practices, and businesses which are able to adapt, businesses which are nimble-footed in terms of their operations, are going to survive on the back of a very, very strong balance sheet. In other words, as I mentioned earlier, out of 4,500 companies, only about 70 to 80 companies qualify on our investment template. I'm equally sure that there will be a lot other companies, majority of them, which will find it extremely hard going ahead because of the new requirements of being a player in the industry. Now, let me look at the opportunities which post-COVID throws out for investors in the Indian equity market. Let me start with an example of the US stock markets for easy comprehension of how the stock market works. On February 19th, the Nasdaq hit a all-time high, and on March 23rd, it fell by 40%. And as on yesterday, it has hit a lifetime high, meaning it has recovered 40% all in about from March 23rd to June 5th. So the speed of recovery is absolutely fascinating, is beyond comprehension, and that's how the market works. The job of a portfolio manager under these circumstances is knowing that stock market is a forward-looking market where perceptions play a major role, and there's always going to be a divergence from the real economy. The position of our fund manager here is to ensure that he sits on the right stocks with the growth prospects, and the rest market will take care whenever the perception turns for good, as it has happened with Nasdaq. And talking about Dow Jones, it is just 9% shying away from its all-time high after falling 32% in the month of March from its February highs. So what I would like to establish here is the role of a portfolio manager is extremely important in terms of his stock selection, and he has to generate an alpha for his investors at any period of time, whether it's a pandemic or otherwise. I don't see why a portfolio manager need to be paid a fee if he can't generate an alpha against the benchmark, because the fee that is being paid to a portfolio manager is only for the expertise what he brings on the table. So that way, I'm very pleased to share with you that our set of investors have been extremely happy with our investment philosophy and the type of returns we are able to generate despite the turbulent background. Now, dwelling on the subject of going forward post-COVID, I'm very sure there are a couple of things that has happened very positive in the last few days, which can propel the equity market and the real economy in the future, the near future. The first and foremost thing, which is very, which has not got perhaps the attention it requests, is the farm ordinance that has been made last week. The Essential Commodities Act, which is a very old 65-year-old act, either to restricted the movement of farm goods, it restricted the farmers from selling freely to anyone and everyone. They had to necessarily sell in a restricted market. They had to sell to mandis, they had to sell to middlemen, and the movement of goods was restricted by the Essential Commodities Act. In an ordinance which is breathtaking according to me, and which is going to have a very profound influence on the rural market going forward, is this ordinance, farm ordinance on Essential Commodities Act, which has made the farmers free to sell their produce to anywhere across the state, and what is just required is a PAN card of the buyer, and they can realize the best returns wherever they think they are going to get. And the point two, which this ordinance enables, is contract farming. As we all know, the agriculturists in this country, by and large, suffer from want of capital, and they are not able to bring in the best practices because of the lack of capital. Now, with the contract farming being allowed, there is going to be a large deluge of capital into agriculture, which I foresee, because there are two things. One is the returns from agriculture is tax-free. Today, in this background of falling interest rates, where your 1-year FD fetches you at best about 6 to 6.5%, even if I can generate about 8 to 9% tax-free money from agriculture, it is abundant return, huge alpha over the type of return otherwise what I get from safe instruments. So, with the contract farming being allowed, I expect capital flow into agriculture sector, which in turn will boost the rural economy. And once the rural economy starts flourishing, as of now, as I talk to you, it's about 17 to 18% of India's GDP. I expect the GDP to rise on account of the rural income, and in turn affect many of the stocks which are rural facing, say FMCG in particular, then farm equipments, your fertilizers, agrochemical industry, and two-wheelers in automobiles. So all these are direct influence of, or rather they directly get impacted by the flourishing rural economy. And I'm sure this game-changing ordinance made by this government is going to have a profound influence on the real economy, and in turn is going to reflect on the stock market in the longer time frame. And on the international side, as we all know, the interest rates across the globe as it zero or negative interest rates. At these interest rates, there is going to be flush of money which is going to enter emerging markets, and though the real economy might suffer, the performance might not be as good as which will what to say, which will be fundamentally not very good. The price markets can catch up on the perception that in future things can turn better. As I was talking to you about Nasdaq and Dow, nothing has really changed much, except that the perception that things can change for better. And as we all know, the real economy is present and stock market is future. So that divergence is always going to remain. And with the flush of liquidity, I expect the markets to remain in good stead, despite getting pretty horrendous numbers, perhaps, from many of the companies across industries. And the third point, on the negative side, there is going to be an election in the month of November in US, and things are pretty uncertain as to how things can, what could be the outcome of this election. As we all know, the current president is pro-market, is a Republican, is pro-capitalist, and that really puts a lot of enthusiasm. It gives a lot of good feeling for the stock market whenever a Republican leads the US presidential office. Now, with whatever has happened in the last few days, we are really uncertain as to what is going to be the outcome of the November elections, and that can really impact the US market and in turn can affect the sentiments across globe. That is something which we have to be very careful about, and we have to position our stocks on such fundamental strips that irrespective of all these outcomes, the business is going to be stable and returns are going to get generated. In other words, what I'm trying to express here is the short-term surge could need not really translate to long-term returns, and we have to be very cautious on our stock selection, and we are fully aware of that, and we take absolute care to ensure that these vagaries of elections and other things really don't affect our portfolio performance. So, in a nutshell, I would like to say that looking at the prospects, looking at the post-lockdown sales, looking at the numbers order flowing, and looking at the management commentary post-lockdown, I'm sure this our economy will be limping back to normalcy over a period of 3 months to 6 months, and God forbid we don't get into any further damage on account of COVID-19. We at Joinedry Value Fund are really looking for a very optimistic returns over a time frame of 3 to 5 years. And in quintessence, what we are looking at is the portfolio manager has to work very hard to have a proper selection of stocks, because ultimately what counts is the stock selection and the ability of the stocks to generate returns. And I would like to highlight one more slide with you. This is a slide on Hindustan Lever Limited, a FMCG company, and which has the highest weightage on our portfolio of close to about 11%. As I was talking to you all this while, the biggest beneficiary, what we foresee on the back of this Ordinance on Farm Act, is going to be FMCG. And if you look at HUL, I just prepared this slide to give you an insight understanding of why HUL looks a premium pick when compared to others. HUL in terms of sales, when compared to 4 other companies, one is Dabur, one is Marico, other is Godrej Consumer Products, and the other one is ITC FMCG division. And FMCG division of ITC excludes the cigarette division. You take in terms of every metric, you take in terms of net sales. It is 44,638 crores for Hindustan Lever, as against 8,703 crores for Dabur, 7,300 crores for Marico, and 9,910 crores for Godrej and 13,000 crores for ITC. All these 4 put together, in terms of sales, are lower to HUL plus GSK. When I say GSK, because GSK has become a part of HUL from 1/4/2020. And now come to their EBITDA margins. Look at their EV to sales, EV by EBITDA. Look at every operating metric of HUL vis-a-vis the other 4 which I have put it on the screen. It is this superior return which HUL generates in terms of its margins and its ability to sustain these margins. And going forward, with the acquisition of GSK in their fold from 1/4/2020, they do get access to a market which hitherto was not part of their distribution system, which is rather medical shops. All these days, HUL has been trying very hard to get a foothold on this medical shop market. Unfortunately, their products were not sold in these retail outlets, and with the acquisition of GSK, which has products like Horlicks, Boost, Crocin, Eno, etc., Iodex, they are going to get a foothold into the new retail distribution segment, which is pharmacy shops and other pharmacists. So, already being a very, very well entrenched distribution company with more than 3,000 distribution centers across the country, with the acquisition of GSK, it is further going to strengthen their sales force, and it is further going to entrench the markets in terms of new segments, also selling their products. So I feel going forward, FMCG will be the biggest winner, and that's the reason why we have HUL as our top pick. And in conclusion, what I would share is, we at Jointree Value Fund are value seekers. We ensure that we protect the investors' money against the vagaries of the markets. As I told you, the standard deviation of the portfolio at any point is very low, and at the short term, we have no idea as to where the market will go. In the medium term, we are not sure as to where the market will go. But in the long term, when I mean long term, I say 3 years to 5 years, we expect all our investors to generate market-beating returns. And I also extend a welcome to all the viewers today to join our portfolio in their ambition for long-term wealth creation. With this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jayaram, for taking us through your philosophy and Jointree Value Fund. So, dear participants, we are now starting the Q&A session. So you have a chat box in your window, so you can type your questions so that Mr. Jayaram will be able to answer your questions. And Mr. Jayaram, we have few questions which has been already emailed to us.
Yeah, please.
So the first question is from Mr. Sudeep Singh. So whether we should have a bias towards cash-rich companies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a pretty obvious answer for me to say yes. For simple reason, today capital is scarce. You don't get, it's not easy to raise capital today unless you have a very strong balance sheet. And though the cost of capital has come down, the scarcity of capital is very high. It is only the strong balance sheets which get funded. And if you're a weak balance sheet, nobody wants to touch it. Though the government is and RBI are trying to push banks into lending, they are reluctant to lend. So yes, if you're a cash-rich company, and I mean, just to give an illustration, the 10 companies which we listed in our top 10 holdings, which is about 60% of our portfolio, are all debt-free. They are all cash-rich, and none of them have debt. Yes, the stock market gives a special privilege. It gives a special rating for companies which are debt-free. And yes, in today's COVID-19 world, being cash-rich enables a company to perform and strengthen their operations. Hope I have answered the question.
So the second question comes from Mr. Sandesh. How do you see the challenges for the auto sectors if it will take a long time to address the COVID-19 worldwide and India team? So auto sectors won't come to the level of 2018 for next 3 to 4 years, except farm sectors, that he is meaning tractors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are near-term challenges without a doubt globally. Once the post-COVID lockdown, there is going to be challenges in terms of discretionary spending. People are going to be reluctant to get into buying high-end cars or getting into costly discretionary items, which includes automobiles. And there is going to be an impact in the short run to medium run. But having said all that, if COVID-19 demands that social distancing is going to be for the next few years, a mandatory requirement for one to be away from this pandemic, I'm sure there is also going to be an allocation for personal automobiles, and this can push the demand, as now evident in a few countries which have opened, which has come out of their lockdown. So that being the case, in the short run to medium term, yes, there are going to be challenges in terms of passenger vehicle sales and other commercial vehicles. But in the long run, when I say long run, at least a year or two, it should catch up to its old levels, though the premium part of the segment will be suffering, and the companies like, say, the entry level models like Maruti, Hyundai, and other car companies which have the entry level model should definitely do much better. The two-wheeler industry should do much better. When I say much better, better than perhaps they might not reach their 2018 levels of, say, for example, Hero Honda was dispatching about 6.5 lakhs to 7 lakh motorbikes a month. Perhaps it will take a lot more time to hit that levels, but they'll be the first ones to hit their old levels once the economy resumes. So to answer your question, as you rightly put it, the farm equipments will do well. Even going by the latest CRISIL report on the agriculture sector in India, it is the only sector which is expected to grow about 2.1 to 3% in the coming year 2021. And the rest of the automobile sector, the two-wheeler will be the first to pick up in terms of its sales. Then will come the entry-level four-wheeler models, and the rest will take a while. So automobile is a long-term bet, not a short-term bet.
Yeah. So the next question from Mr. Naveen Rathore. What's your view? Which is he's asking about the impact on imports from China.
Yeah, I mean, very interesting question. In fact, I failed to mention a point. This government post COVID-19 scenario has given a special incentive to the pharma sector, saying that we are going to incentivize manufacturing of APIs in India, which hitherto the pharma companies were importing from China. As we all know, China, most of the pharma companies across the globe have been importing their APIs from China, including India. And this government has come out with pharmacy park, pharma park, and they have come out with a scheme to incentivize companies which are going to manufacture APIs in India. When I say incentivize, what they're going to do is the differential price in terms of they manufacture in India vis-a-vis what the price they were paying to import from China is going to be subsidized by the government. So yes, imports from China in the long run, when I say long run, it will be at least a year or two before all this takes off, will definitely get impacted. And in the short run, there cannot be a much of impact according to me, because it's such a well-entrenched player, China, and it's not easy to create systems overnight or in a short period of time to replicate or to replace the imports. Yes, in the long term, across the globe, countries are having their own plans to restrict import from China, including India.
Okay, so the next question comes from Mr. Amit Kumar. So how the economy will change while under the long-term influence of COVID?
Yeah, I mean, see, we are yet to see how COVID is going to play, because although the lockdown has been removed partially or in full in some countries, we are yet to see whether this pandemic repeats itself or it's a one-time phenomenon like what we had earlier, a few flus which really affected the world and disappeared all of a sudden. If that happens, it's a blue sky scenario for things to really go ahead and hit its normal operations, what we saw pre-COVID. Otherwise, we have to see how actually COVID plays. I think it's, according to me, a pretty premature to decide as how this pandemic is going to play going forward. If there is no solution for this virus, or if there are no, I mean, other vaccines or etc., it will be a bit too early to say that things will return to normal in the future. So I think we have to wait and see as to how things develop in the front of COVID before we can take a long-term call on the prospects of the economy in the long term. It is now still a dicey situation. In other words, it's a wait and watch situation, according to us.
So the next question comes from Mr. Sohail. So even you have addressed few of this in your presentation. So why US markets are breaking the high, even though the most damage of COVID is with them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the beauty of being a number one player in any field. See, with a $20 trillion economy, they have been able to really give a stimulus of close to $3 trillion, which is India's annual GDP as a stimulus. So when economy can give 15% of the GDP, $3 trillion as a stimulus for COVID-19, it puts enough money in everybody's pocket. And there's, as I was telling you earlier, a flush of liquidity. And the stock market, I mean, the mother's milk for a stock market is liquidity. Wherever there's high liquidity, there's going to be buoyancy. And that's exactly what we are seeing in the US markets. As I told you earlier also, there is going to be a divergence between the real economy and the stock market operations. And it is very, very important for us to understand that it is liquidity which pushes up the prices, and it may not sustain over a period of time. It may not be resilient. It may not be durable. But at the same time, yes, it can, I mean, beyond, it can be beyond one's wits in the short run. And that's exactly what is happening. The stimulus across the Western countries, you take America, take Germany, take Switzerland, it has been absolutely astounding, taking as a proportion of their GDP. So this liquidity, not only US, you take the DAX, which is a German index, you take a CAC, which is a France index. All these indexes are also doing pretty well, and all of them are also nearing their all-time high. Yes, there is going to be this divergence on the back of liquidity.
Yeah. So the next question is from Mr. Sandesh. So how do you see the big investment of global investors to Jio platform? So these companies always have outlook of multiple years, investment of 85,000 crores. It's beyond telecom. So how do you see the prospectus of two big players, that is Reliance and Airtel?
Okay. to be at the outset, let me say we don't have both the stocks in our coverage, and they are not part of our portfolio. For a simple reason, as I told you in our investment philosophy, the most important thing is the company should be able to generate positive returns. And if my memory goes right, as on FY20 also, Bharti Airtel is still a negative balance sheet. It's the prospects of a company like Google going to invest in Bharti Airtel, or Amazon, which is going to, sorry, it's not Google, it's Amazon, which is going to invest in Bharti Airtel. And the prospects of, it's more on the prospective side. And coming to Jio and the investment it has attracted, it's really good for the economy in one way. We have got the attention of these FANG companies in the West, which thinks India is a good prospect for online platform. And we are yet to see how things are going to unfold in reality. We have to, it's again wait and watch. But one interesting and very positive thing about all this is India is being looked at by all these big investors as a potential for online businesses going forward. To that extent, it's a big positive. And let's wait and see how things unfold, because now Jio is part of the Reliance balance sheet. And once it gets listed on its own, we'll get to know the potential of its business, and accordingly, one can take a decision. And in conclusion, it's a positive for the economy as such.
Yeah. So the next question comes from Mr. Mohinder. So he's asking like, so last couple of weeks, there is a smart recovery from the emerging markets. So will this recovery sustain, or it will again go down?
To be honest, we are long-term investors. We really don't give any importance to the short-term movements in the market. As I told you earlier, it is a liquidity gush which is making indices across the world go up. And whenever the smart money withdraws, again it comes down. And we are not in that market of investing for short-term. So as such, it doesn't make a real impression. We don't have an opinion as to where the market will move in the short run. And it depends on the flow of liquidity. Okay. It's more a sentiment factor rather than a fundamental factor. And it's pretty difficult to gauge the sentiments of the smart money.
So, and the last question comes from Mr. Siddharth. So how to invest in this volatile market? Is this volatility will continue? If, then how long?
I mean, to give a pretty simple answer, the easiest way to invest in this volatile market is to invest in joint value fund, because the headache is on the portfolio manager to deliver returns. That's a pretty simple answer. And yes, apart from that, there is huge prospects in this market. As I told you, there are a lot of emerging silver lines on the sky, which one need to understand and can invest. There are lots and lots of prospects, because we are going to come out from a very, very depressed sentiment. And the sentiment, along with once the lockdown is fully removed and operations is restored to normalcy, there is going to be a lot of upbeat in operations and in results. And yes, it is a great market for long-term investment, though in the short term, we have no view about the movement of the market. Yes, it's an excellent market to invest in for long term.
Yeah. So, and one more question, Mr. Jairam. So, the question comes from Mr. Alok. So, what do you think the Nifty will be next 3 years, which is financial year 23?
I mean, if I can just give a lighter answer for this question. The role of a stock analyst is to make the role of an astrologer look good, he used to say. So I think I've answered the question, and I have absolute no knowledge on astrology. So let me give it a pass.
Fine, fine. So, dear participant, if you have any questions, you can text it in the chat box. So Mr. Jairam will answer those. So if no, also you can send us an email at info@pmsbazaar.com so that the questions will be answered from our end.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Jairam and participants for your precious time and taking this webinar most interactive way. Thanks again for all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you.